All right, everybody, welcome back to Close It Now. Sam Wakefield here. It is time again for another guest episode. This interview is pretty freaking stoked. I'm so excited about this one because this is somebody that I met at Door to Door Con. For all of you that were there and didn't say hello, shame on you. You should have come and said hello. But this is somebody that I met at Door to Door Con, and it was just an instant connection. He is somebody that he is somebody that is doing some really incredible things. You are going to be really excited about his business, what he does, his company. And I'm sitting here looking at this sign right behind his head on as we're interviewing. It's the Mamba mentality, right? A constant quest to be, I can't see that, what's the rest? To be the best version of oneself, right? It's behind his fern. We're between two ferns here. And so, but yeah, so this gentleman, he's a total badass in the space. He is the top recruiting consultant in the direct sales space. Is the whole philosophy is the name of the company, which is always be recruiting. And I'm super excited to have him on the show because I know a lot of you right now, as much as I've talked about door to door and adding door to door for your HVAC business and your other companies, the biggest question I'm getting right now is, well, where do we find people? How do we find them? What does it look like to try to build out that knocking team, that setter team? And I found the top recruiting consultant in the entire space for that for you today. So everyone, put your hands together. Welcome to the show, Mr. Luke Miseyko. Thank you for joining me, sir.
Thank you. I'm just going to imagine that people are out there putting their hands together. So actually do
Yeah.
it, guys. Clap. Let's go.
100%. They do. It's cool. This is drive time university. This is what we've always said is like you're driving in between your appointments, and a 15-year outside sales or service technician career, if you use your windshield time as drive time, that's
Yeah.
the equivalent of 3 PhDs. And
Yeah.
so we're
Good way of looking
focused
at
on
it.
up leveling. Yeah. And it is. That's just you translate the hours. That's enough college credit for 3 PhDs. So
Yeah.
you can jam out and stay the same, or you can better yourself. That's what we're doing.
I love it.
Well, so let's start with a highlight reel, man. How in the world did you end up becoming the top recruiting consultant in the space, man? What got you there?
It's a fun story. So I started in sales when I was still in high school. I got a little fender bender back in the day and I didn't know what to do. 17-year-old called my dad. I was like, Dad, what do I do? And he's like, well, you get the insurance information, you find yourself a summer job.
Mm-hmm.
And so
He's like, you're
I
gonna have to pay for it.
Yeah, he's like, you're paying for it. I'm not paying for this thing. He's like, all right. And so I was a football player. We would always go to Starbucks after school and hang out because there was one right across the street. And I was like, you know what? Those people are nice. I'll work at Starbucks. My dad was like, my son's not working at Starbucks. And he said, there's some guy that came to our house 8 years ago and he sold us these incredible kitchen knives called Cutco. And he's like, I don't know if you're going to be good at it. I know these knives are awesome and
Mm-hmm.
I bought them. So like clearly people are buying them. And he just had the most amazing people skills I've ever seen in a college student. So I don't care if you fail or you succeed. I want you to go do that. And so I went in, I did that. I went into an office that was kind of struggling at the time. And even the company, like a lot of Cutco had left for Vivint, like right when I got there.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was this real vacuum of leadership while I was there. And so I came out first summer while in high school, sold about $30,000 worth of kitchen knives, which put 10 grand in my pocket, which as a junior in high school, 10 grand is like making $1 million. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm doing sales forever. This is incredible. Because of that vacuum of leadership, I was able to get promoted into management very quickly. I was a manager as coming out of my senior year of high school, which is pretty unusual.
Yeah.
And so one of the big things I learned is I was decent at sales, but the recruiting and managing portion of it, I found it came to me very naturally. And a lesson I learned is you need to be good at sales to be a good leader, to be a good manager, but it's a completely different skill set that makes you a good manager or leader, right? Like the
Sure.
general doesn't always make the best frontline soldier. Um,
Absolutely.
And I found just like I just was off to the races within
Hmm.
my first summer of being a manager of my own office while in college, where I had my own branch office. I was number two in the nation out of about 400 college students running their own summer office. Followed that up with, after going full time after college, again, was number two. And the guy that was number one was my best friend, Andrew, who is my co-owner in this company as well. And
Nice.
so,
Yeah.
um, I was there for a few years, was at Cutco for just shy of a decade. We recruited 10,000 reps across Florida over the course of 8 years.
Holy
And
moly.
yeah, while I was there, I was put onto the recruiting task force for Cutco. And what we did is we would find like these unique ways of finding people, finding high quality candidates for sales positions and test them out and saw what works. And so
Sure.
not only did I get to test things out in my office, but I also gave assignments to other people for them to test out and learn
Hmm.
how to track the results and kind of have the like
Yeah.
data analytics mind, but also the putting together the people side of word tracks of like, how do we
Sure.
actually do this and tracking the numbers behind it. And so that just, I really loved doing that. And going into that, my dad works in finance. My goal was always get into finance. So I ended up leaving the company and going into private equity because that was in my mind, like my dream job of where I wanted to. And I found myself there. I did pretty well with it. I was making good money. I mean, it's private equity. And I was
Sure.
meeting with the owners of Top Golf out in London and things like that. Like my life was like, oh, this is crazy. But I wasn't happy. And
Yeah.
it was because I wasn't having the same impact that I was when I was teaching hundreds of college students how to sell knives. I
Nice.
was
I
I
love
was
it.
just helping these guys get their next private jet, and it wasn't that fulfilling for me. And it was missing that fulfilling piece. And so my buddy Andrew called me up. We were doing some recruiting lead gen. We had built out a system with Cutco where we had about 50 to 100 VAs out in the Philippines that would log into people's Instagram accounts from a VPN close to them
Right.
and target a bunch of former high school and college athletes to message them for recruiting on behalf of door-to-door companies and Cutco.
Sure. Yeah.
We were able to deliver about 30, 40,000 reps doing that. But I find it was highly variable the results people were getting. And um, as we were looking at it, I started diving with some clients. There were some people we got them 200 leads in a matter of a couple months, and they weren't launching these recruits. And so I hopped on calls with them
Hmm.
and I said, "Hey, call this lead in front of me. Let me see what you're doing." And no offense to anyone I was working with, but it was pretty bad. And so
Well,
I
they
was
don't know
like,
what they don't know, right?
yeah, exactly. And so I was like, yo, I did not realize how big the knowledge gap was between where people are with their recruiting and all this stuff that I had taken for granted that we had at Cutco and
Yeah.
that I had helped put in place in a lot of these things. And so that's when we launched a mastermind through it. Now we do some events, which my real passion is public speaking, is running events. I love being a facilitator and a leader, and I love commanding the energy of a room and giving people implementable things that they come back a few months. You're like, yo, this has helped me grow to XYZ.
Word.
And then we also do some one-on-one consulting. And so it's been really fulfilling. That fulfillment piece, what I love about what I do is now instead of just running my organization and doing this, I love the ripple effects I can have because I see how people's lives are changed when they get into sales, regardless of whether they do well or not. They just
Hmm.
have such a growth oriented mindset that I was never exposed to beforehand, that I luckily got exposed to very early on. But I've seen so many times how much it changes people's lives. And I love to think, I've helped clients grow from 50 to 200 reps in a matter of 3 to 4 months. And in my mind, I'm just like, wow, that's 150 people that are now being exposed to these personal growth oriented cultures that is
Right.
helping them like think of life a different way. And that
Hmm.
is really like the why I do what I do and what fires me up on a day-to-day basis.
Ah, I love it. I love it. I love it. And that's so much of this is, I heard this years ago and it was about a specific industry, but it fits all of sales. Is sales is really just a personal growth plan that happens to have a compensation plan attached.
Yep. Yep.
And on this podcast, something that I say very often is work to become someone worth buying from. And
Mm-hmm.
and when you do that and you up level yourself, everything around you raises along with it.
Yep.
And man, I love that mindset, love that concept. So that's when, so you are you're out there crushing it. You've got the Cutco thing going on, and then number one and number two people in Cutco decide to start a company. Tell
Yeah.
us about that transition. How'd that
Yeah,
journey
that
start?
was I was in the private equity space and my buddy had just, kind of launched this company and Cutco was their first client, building it from within, proving the concept there. They
Mhm.
went to their first door-to-door con. So we actually knew Sam Taggart through a mastermind that we were in called Abundant. And he had kind of heard a little bit of what we're doing and he's like, dude, you got to show this to some door-to-door guys. Like,
Mhm.
Cutco's cool because, to a manager, the value of a rep, like what you earn on your bottom line for a rep,
Mhm.
is around about $1,000. Like it's not very much. And in the door-to-door space, whether it's HVAC, solar, roofing, an average rep can add 5 grand plus to your bottom line on a monthly basis. And we're like, wow,
Yeah.
the value of recruit is so high over here. If we can just help these people do 1/10 of what we were doing, this is adding millions of dollars to their bottom line.
Yep.
And so they went to door to door con. They had this system for this lead gen from the VAs and all that I was mentioning. And they did really well. We sold about 400 grand in contracts at that one. And so he immediately called me and was like, and I've always wanted to work with him. This is my best friend in the whole world. We're the ones that are late at night talking about business ideas, figuring out
Yeah.
what, how we're going to play this whole game of life. And we knew we'd find ourselves back to each other eventually. And he gave me the call and he's like, hey, I've got something real
Yep.
here and I need some help running it.
It's time.
So I got there and one thing that we realized in that moment was, we thought we were good at sales because we had come up in this sales culture and everything.
Mhm.
After meeting door-to-door guys, I realized we weren't really that good at sales, honestly. We were really good at recruiting though. And
Right.
so, it's part of it was just figuring out, hey, where is that gap in the market between what we know and what people don't know in a
Right.
certain industry? And that gap was really wide around recruiting. And there are
Mhm.
a lot of people that were just relying on the Indeeds of the world. I'm sure we'll get into some specific strategies here in a bit
We will. Yeah.
that I just saw what they were doing and saw the potential of what we
Mhm.
can add. And, it's very common that I work with people and they're doubling the size of their team in just a matter of a month or two. And, it's not just what they get right off the bat, but, the infrastructure we get in place to consistently scale these organizations. And so
Sure.
that's kind of how this whole thing got started and transitioning into more of consulting and things like that is I found that I like being the face. I like being in front of people. I like speaking, and I have a bigger impact than I did on just the lead gen stuff. And so
Yeah.
that's when we made that transition early in 2023, January of 2023. We switched from more lead gen to the consulting side.
Nice. I love it. So you're right at a year then. So
Here
congratulations for a
about a month
year since the
before that,
transition.
yeah, before that, I mean, the business has been in place for about 4 to 5 years since we started doing the lead gen thing. And so,
Perfect.
yeah.
I like it, man. So that's a cool transition. Something, I mean, personally, I own Cutco knives. The kid that came in, I say kid, he's, obviously he was like, I think he was like 19 and did a great job. Actually, I gave him some tips to sell bigger, better packages while he was selling me. But the craziest thing, and so side note for everybody out there, you got to offer everything. Start at
Mhm.
the top and offer the biggest and just work your way down. So top down selling. And the lesson here is he showed me the middle package. And then my wife and I were like, well, do you have in a bigger package than that? And where we thought we landed was the biggest one they had. We bought it, completed the whole transaction, and then he shows us in the book, oh, look, here's this bigger set and all of these pots and pans. And we're like, well, why didn't you say so? We needed that too. And so, quick lesson for everybody out there: if you don't offer it, nobody's going to be able to take it. But I love that. And so, let's dive. So, like I said, let's dive in a little bit because I know coming from the HVAC space, so, our traditional way, Zip Recruiter, Indeed, and
Mhm.
well, and Solar. This we've gone down that avenue there as well. That's all really anybody knows. I mean, Monster.com doesn't exist anymore, right?
Yeah.
But or if they do, it's pretty not a thing. But you know outside of that, that's all we know, right? So
Yeah.
we, as an entire industry, we don't know what we don't know right now. But that is why I'm doing what I'm doing, and I'm bringing people like you to the space to talk to us about, you know what are some things we can do. One of the things that this podcast is known for is immediately actionable items, just like you were talking about from the stage. So what are a couple tips and pointers to get people going? Let's kind of unpack this and rock and roll a little bit.
Yeah, let's touch on Indeed ZipRecruiter for a second to put this into context. if you think about who is applying for jobs on Indeed and ZipRecruiter, it is typically people that don't have jobs.
Mhm.
And I know as much as people complain about the job market, let's be real, it's pretty easy to find jobs right now.
Oh,
You
it
know,
is.
it's really not that hard. Like a
It
lot of people.
always has been. It
Yeah, it
just
really
people
is.
don't go out and try. If I
Yeah, I mean,
ever
so
needed
many,
a job,
the
yeah,
reason people say it's hard is because everyone and their mother goes out and gets a marketing degree and wonders why they're not making 100K a year. You know,
exactly.
um,
Geez, I tell everybody, I'm like, you don't like resources, you like resourcefulness. If you really
yeah,
wanted a job, you would go put 20 or 30 applications in person today.
yeah,
Do it again tomorrow, and you'll have one by the end of the week.
yeah. And so, we think of who's applying through Indeed. It's usually people that don't have a job, and there's usually a reason they don't have a job. No offense if you found your job on Indeed, but
Mhm.
typically, not all of them, but most of them are pretty unemployable, at least for the standard that we're looking for. And really the beauty of sales and the reason I love recruiting for sales and the way that our strategies work is, can we find a low barrier to entry job that has a very high value on having a sharp person in the role, right?
Mhm.
And
Sure.
those are what we have to recruit for. People don't typically seek you out and find you. It's, hey, if there's a high value in having someone that's pretty social, that can sell, but there's a low barrier to entry. I don't need a specific degree to get into it.
Mhm.
That's where we need to recruit, right? And, so when you're recruiting through Indeed, I do think it's a good idea monetarily because we have such a high value of recruit where I can have one person that crushes it that then pays for my Indeed ads for the entire year. And
Yeah.
so from a monetary standpoint, Indeed works. But if you're trying to consistently build with quality, it's hard to do that when you're just trying to look for diamonds in the rough through the
Mhm.
Indeeds and ZipRecruiters of the world, right?
Sure.
And so, where do our best people come from? Well, they need to be headhunted. And, I was talking to someone yesterday who hired a guy that he met at a mattress shop. He went in to buy pillows. The guy ended up selling him a $5,000 Tempur-Pedic mattress. And he said, "Yo, you're pretty good at this. You need to come be selling roofs with me."
Yeah.
And so, those are the types of people that, this guy's making 150 grand a year selling mattresses. He's not on Indeed looking for work, but he doesn't know that the HVAC opportunity to make hundreds of thousands of dollars is out there. He doesn't
Right.
know that the solar opportunities and the roofing opportunities are out there. So we need to go to them.
Mhm.
And so everything that I focus on are what I call organic recruiting strategies. Whereas there's paid recruiting strategies, put an ad out, see who applies. That's like the collecting.
Mhm.
But organic recruiting is not paid sources. We're finding these with our elbow grease, with our effort. We're going out and we're headhunting these people. And there's a lot of different ways we can do that. So underneath that organic recruiting umbrella, you've got campus recruiting. If you're able to work with college students, or if you can try to target some people that are seniors that are graduating, campuses is an awesome way to find people because, like I mentioned before, everyone gets a marketing degree and doesn't know what to do with it, right?
Right.
Um, the second one would be like social media headhunting. This is a way that here's a cool tip for you on just like a quick thing you can implement with this is if you go to maxpreps.com, maxpreps.com, they have all of the high school athletic rosters for about the past 10 to 15 years. And so whatever territory
Wow.
you're recruiting in, go find a high school in the territory. If you need people that are out of college or that are graduating right now, set the date back 4 years. It'll show you all the seniors that are on the football team, the basketball team, the baseball team. Find those people on Instagram and go shoot them a voice memo instead of shooting them a text because everyone gets those messages on Instagram from the
Yeah.
Forex guy, from the Bitcoin guy, from the people looking for jobs, and they ignore them. But if you send a
Are you
voice
open to more information about?
Zach, but if you send a voice memo, everyone's like, yo, what is this? Like, I'm
Yeah.
going to listen to this voice memo. And you have a very high rate of people actually opening it and listening to it.
Uh-huh.
And then from there, you can go see, hey, who's commenting on their pictures? Who are they tagging? Who's liking their stuff? And like attracts like. And so
Yeah.
their friends are probably also pretty sharp people, former athletes, things like that. And that's one way that you can find people through social media. And we have a few other social media strategies, but that's the probably easiest to implement right away.
I love it.
And you can send out 15 to 20 of those messages. I probably wouldn't send more than 15 when you get started because the Instagram can block you, but that
Mhm.
algorithm is based on previous activity. And so if you do this, 5 days a week for a certain period of time, you can start to send 20, start to send 25.
Right.
And your answer rate is typically anywhere between 4 and 8%. But the goal is just get them on, get their number, get them on the phone. You're not going to have an influential conversation over text. And so get them on the phone as quick as possible and, get them interested, get those people set for interviews. So that's like the example of a social media strategy.
I love it.
The most effective and highest ROI strategy, and the first one I implement with all of our clients, is developing a personal recruiting strategy for your reps.
Okay.
Now, few reasons this is the most effective. Number one is, that you are with whom you frequent, right? Birds of a feather flock together. Like if you have high performing people, you're going to find high performing people from your high performing people, right? And
Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
the
Yeah, those people are not going to hang out with the chickens in the farmyard.
Yeah, exactly.
They're hanging out with the eagles already.
Exactly. And so they have a lot of friends that are selling mattresses, or the guy working at a coffee shop that's not looking for a job on Indeed, but he's super social, has never thought about doing sales, but it could be a game changer for your organization, right? Mm-hmm. And so we need to develop a system for reaching out to these. And this is where most people fall short, is they have their reps, they have some sort of recruiting bonus or some sort of referral bonus or overrides, and they tell their reps, hey guys, go reach out to your friends and bring me people once they're interested. And what happens is they reach out to their 5 to 10 closest friends first, and those are the ones that are the most negative. And so they're the ones that text them back and they're like, no, dude, I'm not doing door to door, or this is a pyramid scheme. And then they get hit with all this negativity, and now your reps don't want to recruit because their 10 closest friends just said that, right? Whereas most people's recruitable network are not their 5 to 10 closest friends. It's those 100 people that they went to high school with that they would feel awkward reaching out to, and they're just never going to reach out to those people. But out of those 100 people, there's probably 10 to 20 of them that are looking for jobs right now, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And so we need to develop a systemized way of reaching out to them. And so having your reps create a warm market list of people that they could recruit. And then instead of having the rep reach out to them, because they don't know how to talk about the job, they're just like, yeah, man, we go door to door selling HVAC. They're like, what? Yeah. Instead, you as an owner or a manager, be the one to reach out to those people. It's like, hey, man, I work with your buddy Johnny. He's been killing it. He knew we were looking to fill some spots on the team. Said you were either looking for work or could just be a good fit. I just want to tell you a little bit more about it real quick. And it's just like knocking doors. 80% of people are going to say no. 20% of people are like, you know what? I'm looking for a job. Let me explore this. Yeah. And then boom, now you've got people that are higher quality that you never would have found through Indeed. But if you create that system, like if you can get 50 people on this warm market list, I find you can typically schedule about 15% of those for interviews. Even if it's on the low end and it's 10%, that's 5 people from everyone's network that you're getting set for interviews. 2 of them aren't going to show up because that's just the way it works. Sure. One of them's going to say it's not for them. You sign 2 and you retain at least one of them. But now you've duplicated one of your best reps, right? Times 2. And so if you can create the system, you have that going with everyone on your team, everyone you get from Indeed now counts as 2. And then that next person you get brings you another. And then that next person. And so what this is it's a multiplication system. Whereas Indeed, even social media recruiting or campus recruiting, even a lot of these strategies that I like, they're only addition systems. And we're in an industry where our retention is never going to be perfect. We're going to have subtraction. So as long as you only have addition systems with subtraction systems, then you're going to hover around the same size team, maybe slowly grow over time. But if you have a multiplication system, then now you're growing, even if you're losing people along the way. Right. So the other thing that this does is everyone has this limiting belief around personal recruiting that their friends are not going to want to do door to door like they are. And now, before they've even lifted a finger, since we're the ones reaching out to them, that limiting belief gets shattered because they just had 5 friends set for interviews. One of them was a close friend. 4 of them are people they haven't even talked to in years. And now they're like, oh, wow, like some people actually do want to do this. Yeah. Let me put some energy into it. And that's where I'll approach the rep and say, hey, 70% of the people on this list that you gave didn't even answer the phone. Let's shoot a 3-way text where I text them first and then you send a text after saying, hey, man, I've been working here for a couple months. I love it. You should check it out. Builds the credibility, get those ones on the phone. Then of those ones that don't answer, let's go through and have you call them because they're going to answer you. They got your number saved. And you just say, hey, I'm here with my manager right now. He wants to ask you a quick question. Then dish off the phone to me and I'll carry it from there. Over. Now they're seeing how you have these conversations. So instead, when they do want to recruit, instead of being like, yo, bro, do you want to try door to door? They know how to have these conversations because they've seen you as a manager do it. Right. And then after that, now they're super fired up by recruiting. They've already got 2 or 3 friends on the team. Maybe you give them an incentive, or if they can get 5, They can you send them on their dream vacation,
Yeah,
and then
have some
boom, now
bonus
they're
or something.
yeah, now they're like, hey, let me send some messages on social media. Let me go out and shoulder tap. Let me go talk to my friend. When I go home for Christmas, let me
Mhm.
go talk to all my friends when I go out to the bar, see what they're doing, and get a couple
Right.
from there. And so, what this does is it not only creates a systemized way of multiplying your reps, but it creates a culture of recruiting within the organization, right?
Mhm.
Because you have a culture around everything. You got a culture around sales performance. Some people think of culture as just how much fun are we having.
Right.
But that's not it, right? You have a culture around sales performance and your
Mhm.
work habits, and you have a culture around recruiting.
Right.
And so this needs to be like rolled out in a strategic way with the right incentives in place and the right, word tracks on what's actually going to create this culture of recruiting that gets reps wanting to do it.
Mhm.
And if you do that, I find you can get to a point where every rep on average is bringing in 2 to 3 people, and
Right.
it's the 80-20 rule, just like we have in sales. 20% of our reps will result in, give us 80% of the results. Same
Right.
thing for recruiting. You'll have some people that are well connected, that are passionate about the opportunity, that'll bring you 4, 5, 6 guys.
Mhm.
Then, how can we get that lower 80%? How can we develop a system to where they're bringing in at least one? Well, now you've got a real multiplication system. You're really able to scale.
I love this. So leveraging their efforts as well as time is how it grows fast. So everybody listening, there's one thing I want to circle back to. So don't let me forget. I want you to dive in a little bit on why you're targeting that athletic roster for one.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll circle back on that. But the other thing I wanted to go into super quick before we get there is um, talk a little bit about what is possible with, because right now, especially if I've got the lens that I'm listening through and seeing things through, my thought right now is, gosh, I can't add more salespeople until I find a way to create more leads.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have the budget to put more money into my digital marketing dollars and those kind of things.
Yeah.
So that's the mindset we're working from with a lot of people listening, but they're open to this idea and this concept. So talk a little bit about companies that you've seen, that you've worked with, that didn't have a recruiting and or very solid door system in place, or maybe no door system, that they started to implement that and include it, and how they grew, and a little bit of that.
That's the real beauty of door to door is that you're not relying on these inbound leads, right?
Mhm.
And all of these strategies that I just talked about don't require money to get started. It just requires effort. And maybe you have an incentive program that's, hey, once you bring in 5 people that each make 3 sales, then you get XYZ. And so the money is only, any money you're pouring into it is coming after the results. And
Sure.
so we have a few companies that we've started with that were just starting from scratch and
Mhm.
tried some of these, like messaging the athletic rosters to get their base and then multiply from there. But the beauty of recruiting in this way is that you can find door knockers who are
Mhm.
generating those leads, right? And
Right.
so there's not much like prerequisite that you actually need in place to start with getting this going. And I find that when you do have those people under you that you're teaching and all that, your skills get better. It holds you
Sure.
accountable to do the best that you can do, and you start performing at a higher level and
Yeah.
creates a bit of that culture. And so I know we've worked with there's a roofing company, Big League Roofers, that they were a little smaller when they first started with us. I think they're doing 2.7 million, which is somewhat smaller for most roofing companies. And over the course of last year, they scaled to 7.6 million, and over doubled the size of their team. And the biggest thing is the retention rate went up about 250%.
Wow.
And that retention rate is because these are personal recruits that are coming in. They know someone on the team. So if they struggle in those first couple of weeks, they're more likely to stick around and give it a shot because their friend has already had success and they see that.
Right.
And so the retention rate from these also goes up significantly. And so when it comes to just like starting from scratch, having I know this is a big mission of yours, is how do we get more people into door to door? The
Mhm.
beauty of it is you're not relying on those leads or those marketing dollars, is you can start this now, regardless of the resources you have, as
Mhm.
long as you have a training onboarding program in place to get them going and you know how to
Right.
do it. But go try out door knocking yourself and then, start to scale that. And these are easy ways you can start to scale it for free.
I love it. That's awesome. Because the biggest thing that I hear is from different companies. In fact, just one that I was just working at recently, I've been talking to them a lot about, okay, let's start your door program. Let's start your door program. And the biggest thing I hear is, well, we'll start the door program when? You know, okay, I finally got them over the hump about the idea of, okay, I don't have to spend marketing dollars for this. Okay, so the next hurdle is, well, we don't have a team in place to run that knocking team. I don't have a
Oh,
manager
yeah.
specifically for it. We don't have a department for that. We don't even know how to run it once it starts. So, what is kind of a way over that obstacle in that mental block?
You need two things. Number one is just go start doing it yourself, and
Yeah.
you'll start to create that program, right?
Mhm.
Um, and that is, probably the first prerequisite is it's funny when I first looked at this industry, I didn't even know about door to door. I wish, by the way, most of my talks I start with, hey, you guys aren't that good at recruiting, and here's how I know. It's because I was stuck selling knives for a decade and I didn't even know this existed. And not one of you messaged me.
Right.
And I did not realize how successful the space is. I didn't
Mhm.
realize there's guys out there making $500,000 to $1 million knocking
Right.
doors. I was
Yeah,
like, what?
seven-figure personal
It's
income,
seven
and what we
figures.
saw hundreds of them at Door
Yeah.
to Door Con a couple of weeks ago, and HVAC tickets are just as large, commissions
Yeah.
are just as big, and nobody's doing that. The only people I just listened to a podcast by this guy, awesome, incredible person. I'm going to mention Brent Buckley, man. I can't wait to get you on the show. So if you hear this, you've got to be a guest in the hot seat here. But what's happening, there's only a handful of people in our entire industry, entire vertical that earn over $1 million a year, and they're people that are sit at right at the top of this organization. And instead of door knockers, they've just built out this team of people who are appointment setters. In the industry, we'll call them service technicians, right?
Yeah.
And but it's the same setter closer model, which now we have the ability to scale that dramatically faster because we're not waiting for somebody to have something broken to call in. Now we just go find them and go get them. So we can scale bigger, faster, stronger. And somebody who gets the skill can go out and with your own effort earn $1 million, sell
Yes.
10, 15, $20 million in HVAC deals without the team. You just go out and do it and make it happen.
Yeah.
And that is where the magic starts to happen. And that's how teams are starting to scale because now it doesn't take a whole team to support one person.
Yep.
And if that one person has, God forbid, an accident or something and they can't perform, well, now what does this company do?
Hmm.
So now we're able to scale lots of people that can do it.
Yeah. And the reason this was such a big light bulb for me is I remember as I started to put my foot into this industry, I was like, I can never, I mean, dude, I'm coming from private equity. You think I'm gonna knock doors?
Yeah.
It's like it's humbling. But
Uh-huh.
then when you see the 7-figure earners that are doing it, it's like, oh wow, like this is real.
Yeah.
This is something that
Right.
we can create. And so the next step is figuring out just what are your processes on the doors? What does the pitch look like? What
Mm-hmm.
how, what are those little nuanced things that, there is all this expertise out there. I'm sure you've plugged it before, but D2DU is an
Mm-hmm.
incredible resource. Look up D2D experts, D2DU.
Yep.
Sam and I both have some modules on there.
Yeah. Yeah, we do.
And that is such a great tool that can help you just get off the ground and running and just like, cool, here's how I just watched Sam's videos on this and it's just like, here's how you pitch. Here's exactly how it works. Here's how you knock. Here's what you say. And it's like a step-by-step process. And if you can just create that, then your job is basically just mentality management on
Mm-hmm.
how do we get people started and actually wanting to do this, which is where I come in, right? And
Right.
so
Exactly. Yeah. So
uh
super quick, everybody, to go find that course, just go to hvacdoors.net and that'll take you directly to the HVACU course that Luke's talking about.
yep. And just watching those should give you a lot of confidence. And step one, get out on the doors. Step two, create that training onboarding process for what you're going to do. And it's really not that complicated. I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people think opening up this whole new program is going to take 6 months of ideation of like, how are we going to do it? But in reality, if you spent a couple days for a couple hours a day just digesting it and going out and
Mm-hmm.
swallowing the pride and hitting the doors,
Yeah.
then it's you can create an organization that is then doing millions per year because you have your own internal lead system that's automatically generating these.
Right. And even cooler is it's not weather driven now. So
Hmm.
in an industry that's very dependent on the weather, if they're not, don't have all of these things in place, now we create our leads on demand anytime we want, year round. So does it the more beautiful the weather, the who cares? We just go.
Yep.
Let's get it done.
One of the concepts that relates in both recruiting and door to door and all these different industries is that I talk about often is driving versus collecting.
Mm-hmm.
When you're just putting ads out, whether they're Indeed ads for applicants or they are ads out for HVAC, then you're just collecting. You're waiting to see what comes in, and you're like, all right, perfect. These people want it, and that's just the easy way, right? Like,
Yeah.
do you want pleasing methods or do you want pleasing results?
Yeah.
And sometimes in order to get pleasing results, you have to sacrifice pleasing methods, right? You got to go
Exactly.
out and do the work. And
Mm-hmm.
so same thing with recruiting is, like, hey, I need to actually go out and find the people that I want instead of placing some ads and hoping they come to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, I love this. So let's turn this corner a little bit because what I know about HVAC companies is most of them would tell you this sounds fantastic. I would love to get it started, but where do I find the hours in the day? Even those couple days a week, couple hours, I don't have that right now.
Mhm.
So how can that be supplemented by what you do?
It's more about the intention behind the hours if you actually know what you're doing, right?
Right.
One thing that is great about this kind of blue collar type industry is there's a big lead from the front mentality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of, even when I have my team, I have to go and lead from the front, lead the team in sales and everything like that. And one thing I work on with a lot of people is like, hey, you can lead from the front in the way that you manage and that you recruit. And that is a way, like, I had teams of hundreds of people, and none of them ever got the sense that I wasn't working hard. I was the hardest worker in the office leading the
Sure.
team.
Yeah.
And so thinking, I think that depends on what your goals are. If you're
Mm-hmm.
someone that like, hey, I just need, a couple guys to generate some leads for me, and that'll be a game changer, then treat it like a blitz where it's like, hey, let's go all out for 2 weeks where I can spend a few hours a day dedicated to this. And that's
Mm-hmm.
not going to be my typical schedule, but I'm going to get this off the ground and running by putting a little extra effort in early and then finding more of a sustainable system. A lot of people in this industry look down on group interviews. I actually love group interviews if
Oh,
that's what
same.
free up your time.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot of extra psychology involved on how to facilitate a group interview. I would only accept people one-on-one and make sure you have that one-on-one touch. But you can cut that down to 10, 15 minutes and accepting someone one-on-one if you do a group interview
Right.
effectively. So that's one option is having group interviews, having a couple of those a week in your schedule that you're funneling people into those makes it so that maybe each of those an hour, boom, that's 2 hours a week, and then maybe an extra hour to do the one-on-ones.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's more of analyzing your priorities. How much of a difference would it make in your life if you have five guys out there that are generating leads for you? Is that worth maybe sacrificing time for a few weeks to get that set up?
Right.
I think so, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
if you
Give us while we're on that topic, give us a feel because really nobody in the industry really has any concept of what kind of numbers can come from that, what kind of metrics within appointments. So, say you've got a 5-person knocking team that you've put together, what kind of volume can somebody just roughly expect from that? I mean, what would make it worth it for them to really consider this? So, I think of the second they hear these numbers, that's going to make a little bit of difference for them.
Yeah, the numbers are all over the board, between solar, roofing, pest, HVAC, all of
Sure.
that. But you might have a better idea around HVAC on what someone
Mm-hmm.
can get set in a day. But I'm pretty sure from conversations I've had, that number is probably 3 to 4 extra appointments set in a day from HVAC.
Oh
Probably,
yeah.
yeah, that's probably a little low.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
per person.
yeah. And even if let's say your people are terrible, you're not very good at training them yet, and there's gonna be a learning curve. That's also one thing I always temper people's expectations. Like, this is a skill that you develop that will get better over time. But even if it's one per day and your closing rate is 30%, well, that means every 3 days you're getting an extra sale. What does that add to your bottom line? Right.
Right.
What is that? That number is usually pretty high if you're now adding two a week per person on your team. So now you've got five of those. So that's
Yeah.
10 extra sales a week with only a 30% closing ratio. What is it? That number is based on your business model and whatever you guys are making per sale on average. But Something
Sure.
tells me adding 10 sales a week on top of what you're already doing is probably worth it to maybe take your foot off the gas a little bit on sales to dedicate a little bit of time into getting those 5 guys, right?
Word. I want to reemphasize this because I grabbed my calculator, and for everybody listening, that's 10 a week times 4. So we're talking about 40 new sales a month times 12. So we're talking about 480 new sales a month. And because they're doors, so they're not going to be your just average replacement ticket. So let's roll the average ticket number back a little bit and call it, say, we'll be super conservative and say $4,000. You just added $1.9 million to your bottom line. And so everybody be very, very, I want to be very, very clear. What Luke just said is that's if people are terrible.
Yeah, that's what people are bad. And that's the beauty of, a lot of times when I'm working with clients, I have to do some of this mentality management and walk through the numbers. Typically, when I do that, I just cut every number in half. I'm like, let's be
Yeah.
super conservative. And the numbers always still come out in millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And
It's insane.
that's why there's so many 7-figure earners,
Yeah.
that are in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because, it's a high value problem. It's a high ticket item.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to how can we increase our overall sales, one of the reasons I love working in recruiting is really the formula for D2D and really sales in general
Mm-hmm.
is how many people do you have times how many opportunities are they getting a day? How many real conversations, appointments they're setting up, like how many opportunities times their closing ratio.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you want to double your business, increasing your closing ratio by 50, by 100% and doubling that is pretty hard, right?
Yeah.
Like there are things that you can do to do that, but
Mm-hmm.
it's usually a long game. It's pretty tough.
Oh yeah.
Increasing the number of opportunities of people they're talking to, appointments scheduled, that can also be really hard. A lot of times it takes double the ad spend or it takes double the time on the doors. And a lot of times we don't have that amount of time. And that's really hard. Increasing the size of your team by 2, it's not that hard. And so, of those 3 that you can do to double your business, recruiting is such a low hanging fruit that is like, it makes it like walking through numbers just like you did. It makes it a no brainer of like, oh, wow,
Yeah.
I should probably dedicate some
Let's get
time.
some time in this. Yeah.
Yeah. And then another option is find yourself a recruiter. You can have this, be a department within your organization that you're just checking KPIs and they're the ones running it. One thing I will say with that, though, I've seen a lot more success for people when they hire that role internally of someone that's already sold. If someone doesn't like door to door and you're like, okay, cool, well, how about you do recruiting? People can feel what you believe more than they believe what you say. And so if you have a recruiter that doesn't want to knock doors, then you're gonna hire a bunch of people that actually don't want to knock doors. Right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
typically who I would have running my recruiting was always like one of my top 5 reps. And I incentivize it proportionally, because it was that valuable for me. Because whoever your recruiter is, that's the type of person you're going to duplicate. And so that is an option. I always suggest you get your systems in place and you get the word tracks and you know how you're going to train them ahead of time and you kind of take ownership over this. But long term, to free up your time, getting that recruiter is a way that you can kind of build out a department where you're not having to do all that work long term.
Right. Right. I love this. And for everybody that's listening too, and you're like, wow, I don't even know how to get started. One, you can grab my course because I do have a whole module on that. And also message me because that's something that I've built out and am building out currently is the training for your company to be able to, because really at the end of the day, once we recruit all these people, then what do we do with them? And that's exactly what Luke is talking about, and having a system to onboard and to train those people and show them their path into. So step 1 is, you're setting appointments on doors. Step 2, learn to sell it yourself. Step 3, and so to show them a very clear career path also is, I'm sure that's part of the recruiting conversation.
Mhm.
But then at the same time, I'm helping companies build that out internally so they have that system in place so they can turn that switch on. And then what I've been telling everybody for months now is when you implement doors into your company, your biggest mission will all of a sudden be how fast can I hire and train production to keep up with these guys? Because
Mhm.
I mean, and if you don't believe it, there's and I'm sure Luke, you can tell these stories, story after story of all these different industries of companies that have been put out of business because they found one guy on the doors that outsold the world, and they outsold the company and put the company out of business because they just couldn't keep up.
Hmm.
Right. And so that's what obviously what we don't want, but at the same time we kind of do, because I mean, everybody out there, raise your hand if you want your biggest struggle to be we can't install fast enough because they're outselling us.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the golden place to be, because we can train people to put it in. And so I love this conversation so much. So let's do this a little bit too. Tell us more about Always Be Recruiting and how you work with companies, and then we can kind of get some contact info and stuff in here.
Yeah. So three main avenues where we work is number one is our masterclass. That's kind of the first step for a lot of people. On there, I've got 150 different modules that walk through, both how to set up your recruiting system. So what does an interview script look like? How do we call reps, call candidates and set them for interviews? How do we start tracking the right way? But also, we have 7 different organic outreach programs. And so one of those is that personal recruiting program I talked about, three-way texting, alley-ooping. We've got campus recruiting. We've got a few different social media strategies. Any one of those things has the capacity to get you 20 guys or more. I've seen it get people 100 plus guys. And so the beauty of it, by the way, is, there are certain industries where it's the more the merrier. For instance, the pest industry, they don't have a lot going on with fulfillment. They have almost unlimited fulfillment capacity, so they have a lot. But there are people like roofing and like HVAC where you can only scale to a certain point. You can only get to a certain point where production needs to be able to keep up with that.
Right.
And so it's targeting like, where is that number? But the beauty of it is that, with these strategies, it's not like pouring a bunch of money into Indeed, where once you are at that cap, now that money is going down the drain. Since it's more effort based, once you do reach that point, it's like, cool, now I know how to do this. I can get this started again whenever I want. I can scale back. I don't have to be doing that this week. Right.
Right.
And so yeah, so that's in the masterclass is we basically give the tools to be able to do that. We have a mastermind call once a week, and then I have 3 office hours where I just hop on for an hour 3 times a week. No one hops on all of them. It's usually people are coming to once a week. So it's, 4 or 5 people on each one. And we just talk about their business and what they want to customize. And that's a way that, every one of their mothers got modules, programs, and everything like that. And I wanted to add a certain element of customization to it and individualization of how we can work with people one-on-one in a more scalable way.
Yeah.
And so we've got a whole documents and scripts library with scripts, word tracks, SOPs that we give people in that. And so that's kind of the first one, the base level. The second one is events. And, my real passion in life is creating transformational experiences through events. I've been to a lot of transformational experiences. I know the power of what a 3 to 5 day event can do. And so those events are kind of a mix of, hey, here's a lot of implementable, actionable recruiting tips. And I like to mix in some personal growth stuff in there as well, because that's what I'm like super passionate about. And so our events are awesome. We have one coming up in Miami, March 1st through 3rd, where we're going to a like high rise in Miami. We're doing a bunch of teaching there for 3 days, and then we're ending it on a yacht party. I'm a big fan of house music. We got a few DJs coming in Miami. We're gonna end it with like fun and like celebrating the growth that we've had. And so the master class is more, hey, here are the tools, take them and run with them. I'll help keep you on track through those implementation calls and build this foundation over time. The events are more of like, hey, an injection into like, hey, let's get these strategies down within a weekend. We're going to role play them. We're going to give direct feedback. Everything we teach, we typically role play. And then we have a contest, have everybody go up in front of the room and do the close to their interview, or do, how do I get more market lists from reps, or setting out because of our interviews. And then we give out prizes for the best ones. And then we always end with some sort of fun and celebration. And then the last one where we typically have the biggest impact is our consulting. And, I've found that just working with people one-on-one it just unlocks a whole new ballgame of direction. And so, the one thing that lacks in the max class is that element of accountability of like, hey, this is exactly what we're getting implemented. It's more people come to me and they're like, hey, I see these tools. How do I deploy them? Whereas consulting is like, hey, let's do a real deep dive into your numbers. Let's figure out where are the hidden blind spots. What do we need to get covered? What is the next big initiative? Give assignments and like follow up on those. I'm working after hours creating custom documents for those ones. And I'm essentially part of their company. It feels like those are the ones where it's really fulfilling for me to see the growth that people have. And so
Yeah.
we're also adding some software solutions on a personal recruiting app that reps can download and essentially easily go through and just like send a list of contacts where you can be averaging 100, 200 per person. So that's something that we're rolling
Nice.
out in March, as well as some more software solutions with the CRM on the back end that can do confirmations for interviews and things like that to help increase those interview shows and shows to training. So yeah, you can find me at, if you look up Always Be Recruiting on Instagram, it's at Always Be Recruiting. My personal profile is at Luke Miseyko. And so on there, you'll find a bunch of great recruiting content. I've
Can you spell that for
recently
everybody?
yeah, Lukemeyko. And
Perfect.
it's long. So if you just type in Lukemis, I'm the first one that comes up. I paid for the verification. I always look down on people that did that, but once you get into this consulting space, I had to swallow the frog and be like, all right, let me pay my $8 a month so
Yeah.
people can actually find me, because I do have one of those names that are harder to find. So
I feel you. I'm the same.
yeah. And I also made the transition like, all right, I need to be putting content out there. And I'm actually loving it. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
at first I hated it, but that's another thing is, swallow the frog, just start putting the content out there. You always have some people like, oh yeah, look at this guy. But
Right.
it's generated a lot of business for us. And one thing I always say, I give knowledge for free and I just sell the implementation. And
Nice.
so that's why I love doing these podcasts. That's why I love speaking at events. I will hop on, I'm not, like I said in the beginning, I'm not super passionate about sales. I'm very passionate about recruiting. And so I've had people that I even just do sales calls with that come back, they didn't buy, but they implemented what I showed them on a sales call. And they're like, dude, this worked. And then they come back and buy later, because
Yeah.
I just very much go value first, and I love just giving the knowledge. And so there's not really secrets, right? Now there are things, there's a lot of psychology involved, and of how do I get a rep to want to give me a warm market list of 50 to 100 people. And just that, I've had people that are like, dude, I sat down with my rep. I told him to write down 100 names. He only gave me two. I'm like, that's because we got to frame it the right way, right? And so that's the example of like, hey, I give you the knowledge. I love, just giving all the secrets. The max preps thing, go and run with it. But if you want to know like exactly what to say and the psychology that goes into it and how to convert these at much higher level, that's exactly what we
Right.
work with.
I love this. I love this so much. And I'm 100% the same. Anybody that's ever listened to my show, like I get so many comments from people that are like, "Oh my gosh, every other trainer I listen to, they talk about the solution, but they don't actually give you the wording or
Yeah.
the solution." And I'm like, "Man, here, take it." Like
Yeah.
I want to see the number of stories that I have of people who've like went from almost getting fired to being number one in their sales team
Yep.
strictly from listening to the podcast. Have never sent me a dollar, and I don't ever expect them to. It's fine. They're
I
already
love
there. It's like, great, let's
it.
go.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, my main goal is to make an impact, and if you
yeah,
want framework with accountability and like we make sure that it definitely happens, those are the ones that I work with. But anyone
yeah,
that's eager to learn, I mean, I've gotten 3 calls during this podcast of I got to see what they are, but it's probably people
right.
just asking recruiting questions, and
Love it.
I love
Love it.
giving that. So if you do have anything around recruiting, feel free, message me on Instagram. I'm an open book. I'm here to help you. Obviously we do have our paid, more structured ways of helping, but I'm also
Sure.
more than happy to be helping for free as well.
I love this, and same for HVAC stuff, y'all. And if you want to have questions around like a little more in depth of how this would work for your HVAC company, that's where I come in. And that's a big part of why Luke and I we're working on some things right now. We're in kind of in conversation of what that's really going to look like, but we're putting together a way to be for those of you who want to take the info and run with it. Awesome, love it, highly encourage that. For those of you that are like, man, I know that this is what I need to do, but I just don't know exactly how to implement, and I don't have the bandwidth or the time or even the resources to put somebody into that, like the master class or learn it to do it for us. We want more of a hands-on, we will train you and train your people type of a, like accountability, the consulting. that's what we're putting together, because I'm so
Mhm.
passionate about exploding our industry and changing this in our industry that I want to be on the front lines. So those company right now, I'm looking for a handful of companies who raise their hand and say, I want to go from 2 million to 8 million in a year. I want to go from 10 million to 100 million in as short or as long as you decide, Mr. Business Owner, because it's up to you. I have literally seen companies, and I'm sure Luke has as well, go from 10 million to 100 million
Mhm.
in less than a couple of years, strictly by adding reps to the field.
Yep.
And it's very possible in HVAC, just nobody's doing it yet. Are you going to be on the front lines of that? So raise your hand, pop me a message, sam@closeitnow.net. Find the Facebook group. Luke is going to join us in there. We're going to create a post around around this, and he is so if you don't remember the way to get a hold of him, just go to the Close It Now Facebook group, and he'll be in there also. And man, we're changing the way people think about recruiting, and this works for everything. Everybody out there, it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be just for doors. This works for if you need service technicians or salespeople or office staff or whatever. Recruiting principles are recruiting principles. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Yeah, there is like I said, sometimes the personal recruiting side can be better with low barrier to entry jobs. So if you do need
Mm-hmm.
someone that is, qualified, but usually a qualified service technician probably knows other qualified service technicians. And so there's still probably doesn't work at the same scale, but the principles are the exact same. And the
Mm-hmm.
psychology of how we do it are the exact same. It's the scale that changes depending on the industry and the role.
Sure, absolutely, yeah, and obviously, how many? If I need 3 and not 30, that's
Yeah.
we're going to go after it a little bit differently, and we can be a little more selective that way too.
Yeah.
It's like, okay,
Exactly.
let's cut the fluff off the bottom. There's enough red flags with this load of people that we'll let them go to the competition, and the competition can get all the red flags. We'll take all of the best people, right?
Exactly.
Oh, I love it. So, man, this has been a great conversation. I very, very much appreciate you hanging out with us today. Uh, any last words or golden nuggets you want to leave with everybody? One, I love what you said, and this applies to everything. People can feel what you believe more than what you say,
Hmm.
and that is so so powerful.
Yep.
So, anything else you want to leave with everybody before we land this plane?
Yeah, I just had our mastermind call this morning where I was going over how to shape a rep's mindset as they're getting onboarded and trained. And that concept of people can feel what you believe more than they believe what you say rings true. That goes for everything. And I was on a call with someone yesterday where he was telling me, he's like, hey, I've hired all these people, but they're just mindset's not the right guys. Like I'm not finding the right people. And I said, hey, if you're a good sales rep and you don't make a sale, who do you blame, yourself or the customer? You blame yourself, right?
Mhm.
Like we take ownership. Like that's what makes a great sales rep is that seller be sold mentality. But that also goes for recruiting, right? It's like, hey, if they don't have the right mindset, whose fault is that? Is that them or yours?
Mhm.
Well, we have to change their mindset. And so when it comes to recruiting, and onboarding and training and finding the right people, it's less about finding the right people and more about how can you create the right people? How can you set up
Mhm.
an onboarding structure where you are shaping that mindset, you're building confidence because a brand new rep's success has very little to do with how good their pitch is and everything to do with how confident they are in the product and the opportunity.
Mhm.
If people genuinely believe that the customer should get it and that's what's in their best interest, then they are going to make a sale. I have it all the time where I skills checked a rep and I said, hey, pitch me, right? Show me your clothes. And they're 3 months on the job and they're absolutely crushing it. And their pitch sucks. It's so
Yeah,
bad. And I'm like,
it's
how are you
horrible.
selling anything? But they believe in the product and customers can feel that.
Yep.
And you can create that. Like, yes, there is, it's going to benefit you to have someone that has some really good social skills in place. But it's our job to create the people that we want. And, that's easier with higher quality people that are very coachable, that you're
Mhm.
finding the right guys. But in the end of the day, it's still on you to be the one that shapes the mindset how you want it, that shapes them doing the job the way that you want it.
Right.
And that's something that starts from the very first conversation you have with them and goes all the way through till when they're on the doors and beyond. And so it's something that you can take ownership over and, not just blame the market, right?
Right.
And, be careful not to get caught in victim mentality and just
Mhm.
say, hey, I'm going to own this and I'm going to do this. And that's,
Right.
that's when I see people really see the results.
I love this so much. So one thing I just actually saw my note. Let's cruise back around because I'm so intrigued.
Athletes.
I know the answer, but I want everyone on that's listening to hear. Yeah,
Yeah,
let's talk about the athletes. Why are we focusing on them?
yeah, I mean, anyone that's been an athlete, even at just the high school level, has proven that in some way or another they are growth oriented. They had to be going to practices every single day. They are, people that are striving for something, at least a decent work ethic to an extent. And I find typical, former athletes just give me a baseline of a certain recruit that they tend to do really, really well. The same thing goes for people that were high performing in the classroom, people that were great musicians. I like to find people that were good at something growing up, right? Instead of just drifting through life. And any sign of that is like, okay, cool. I've got something to work with here. Like
Yeah,
they're coachable. I know that they know how to strive after something. Now my job is how can I make that next thing this right here, right?
right.
And so it just gives you like a baseline of people. And I find athletes are the most plentiful and easiest ones to target. But same thing rings true for the musicians of the world, for the
Mhm.
engineers, anyone that has been passionate about anything, even if it were just in high school.
Sure.
They've got it in them to be successful.
I love it. That's exactly where what I knew you were going to take us down this road. And the cool part is, if we're talking about specifically going door knocking, we're talking about a lot of steps in a day. More than likely, athletes are going to be much
Yeah,
more
it's gonna help.
capable physically to do it.
Yeah,
Nothing against anyone who can't walk 15,000 steps in a day or 20,000 steps in a day, but if
but it
somebody
helps.
is already there physically, man, that's a few summers ago when I went out on doors for the first time in a boot camp in Tucson, Arizona, and I was 40 pounds heavier than I am now. And oh my
Oh,
gosh,
it's a
I was like,
great weight loss program.
this is the best loss program ever. It was incredible. I had 2 weeks and I think I was down like 10 pounds. It was nuts. And I
Dude,
was
I'm
eating
down.
like everything because like I'm so exhausted.
Yeah, I'm down 40 pounds this year, and a lot of that was just walking. I mean,
Yeah.
I started lifting and everything, but like on my off days, I just started walking, and getting those steps in goes a
Yeah.
long way.
Oh, I love this. Well, cool. So let's wrap this up. For everybody listening, again, go Luke Miseyko. That's LukeMiseyko. So at Luke Miseyko, right? And
Yep,
then
always be
also
recruiting.
always be recruiting
It's the
is
company
his
page.
company. Yeah, make sure you find them on Instagram, follow them, go check them out. Message me. We're putting something together that is going to be exactly what you need to be able to implement this in your organization quickly, and also not just quickly, but I mean, who cares how fast you implement a program? It's how fast you get results. So
Hmm.
that's the piece that most people are missing. The comment that I heard recently that just is upside down, which is we'll start that program once we get these other things figured out with our digital marketing, and I just can't afford to start doors right now because we're struggling so much with our ads and with our leads right now. And I was like, that's exactly why you need to roll doors immediately, because it's zero, almost zero, basically zero cost, because we pay for performance. We're not paying until we start seeing results. It's just incredible the way it works. So I love it. So everybody that's listening, message me, sam@clositnow.net, or pop me a text, 512-364-8559, and we'll get you connected with what we're going to be doing here. We're going to be showing you how to implement immediately and holding your hand. And when we get those people, I'll train them. That's part of what we're putting together. We want to get them, but then we also need to train them and onboard them properly the right way, with the right scripting, with the right pitch, and then hold their hand until they see some success, and then show you how to manage it. So that's what we're putting together. And it's basically ready to roll, everybody. So mention that. Last announcement is March 21st and 22nd. I am hosting an in-person sales masterclass in Austin, Texas. So you have got to get your butts here. Those, if you want to learn how to close it now, this is the sales system that is we're seeing every single time I step out in the field and do ride-alongs. We're seeing 70% close rate. Not So that's cool, but even cooler is stories from the field where guys are going from 40, they've been a 40% close rate for the last 2 or 3 years, and now they're at 60% plus months later. Or stories from guys that were, $8,000 or $9,000 average ticket that they're now $16,000 average ticket. Or, a whole sales team that, when I showed up and there's 1 week left in the month, the company is behind budget by over $300,000. And a week later, with what we learned in the sessions, they're over 30K above budget for the month, closing out the month, and blew the minds of the company and the industry. So that is the sales system that I'm teaching March 21st and 22nd here in Austin, Texas. Email me, sam@closeitnow.net. Find it in the Facebook group. It's all over my social media. Instagram is The Real Close It Now. And yeah, we will pop me a message in any of those spaces, and we will make sure that you are included. Everyone who registers and buys a ticket before March 1st, so anytime in February 2024, there are some bonuses that you will get that no one else will get after. If you buy your ticket after or into March, if you buy your ticket after February, you won't get the bonuses. So make sure to register and get your ticket right away, because we want to make sure you have a spot. We are capping this thing and it will sell out. So that is the announcement for the day. Thanks for joining us, Luke. It has been a pleasure, sir, and I am excited about what we're going to do together. It is going to completely disrupt this industry.
Yeah, I'm excited for the industry. That's what really fires me up, is the grand scale that we can make an impact. And so I love it, man.
Geez.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. We'll have to get you on stage at one of my events, man. I love.
Yeah, I was just thinking. I was just checking my schedule. You're reading the announcement. I was like, I've never been to Austin. I can maybe make that work.
Maybe we'll add a day to it or something and do a whole recruit. Hey, so actually, here's a question. I'm going to put this in the Facebook group, and if everyone out there, if you would like an extra session on recruiting, message me, and we maybe will add a half a day or something. See what we need to do. I'm already so for everybody listening, I'm already planning the night before the session on the 20th, a whiteboard hot seat type of a mastermind session for whoever comes, that says, okay, come prepared and have all of your metrics and what is the number one business problem that you want to solve, and we will solve it for you along with you right there, and point you in the right direction, help you out, get you the right resources, give you the right ideology and mindset to fix that problem. And so everybody message me if you want a day on recruiting, because I feel like this is the biggest missing piece in HVAC. The biggest struggle everybody always says is there's no people in the workforce. No, there are. You just haven't found them yet. And so we'll get together on that. But all right, everybody, that is it for the day. Go out there, save the world one heat stroke at a time. Go save the world one frostbite at a time.